Okay, welcome to lesson 1 of our economics unit. This unit will have several different parts to it, but to begin we're going to start with some economic basics, and the two topics there are what is economics, why are we studying this, why are we learning this, and why is it such an important term, and then something that is pretty simple but plays a huge part in our economy and economies all over the world, is this concept of scarcity. So these are the two topics that we're going to really make sure we clear up here in lesson 1, and this is just the basics of economics as we get started here. Okay, so what is economics? Economics, the textbook definition is, as you can see, the study of the decisions that go into making, distributing, and using goods and services. So when you hear the term economics, it's actually, it's like sociology or psychology or anything like that, or medicine, things that you study, that you look into why things happen. So in this case, when we're talking about economics, we're talking about why do certain companies make certain products? Why do we use certain distribution methods like trucks or airplanes or boats, selling over the internet? And then using goods and services. What do we buy? Who buys what? What do we spend our money on? What services do we want today that we didn't want yesterday? Or what services don't we need anymore? What goods do we want to keep making? What goods we don't want anymore? So it's a science, it's a study. So there are people that spend their lives studying this, and our own personal lives come into play pretty much with economics, because it's also on a small scale. How do we do things? What do we make? What do we distribute? What do we buy? Well, what goods and services do we consume? Okay, so economics, again, on a big picture, if you look at the country as a whole, and then down to the small picture of your family or you as a person, which leads into the definition of just the economy. So our United States economy. All right, and that, as you can see, the textbook definition, the ways in which people make, distribute, and use goods and services. So there are different ways that this can happen. So what goods and services are we as a people making? What are we buying? What goods do we want? What services do we want? How much money are we spending on this item as opposed to that item? So that is what we mean by our economy. So you hear that term a lot on the news, in the newspaper, in magazines, on the radio, whatever. How is the economy? The economy is slow. The economy is speeding up. We're in a poor economy. We're in a good economy. So that word gets thrown around a lot, but when it comes down to it, it's just simply we as a people, what are we spending our money on? What are we not spending our money on? Are we spending our money? Are we saving our money? Are we spending too much money? So there's a lot that goes into it. So, but just to break it down in very simple terms, it's how we're spending money, what we're spending it on, and then what goods and services are we making. Okay, so now we have this concept of scarcity, and this is kind of helps tie everything together. So you can see the first note there is, as people, we have unlimited needs and wants. Okay, so from the basics of water and air and clothes and food, those are the things we tend to think about as our needs in life, and we're all pretty similar in those regards. Then we have an unlimited amount of wants, from the fanciest cars to the fancy clothes to houses and boats and electronics. And unfortunately, as much as you might not want to admit it, if you got that dream car there that you see, this Audi R8, you still wouldn't be satisfied. We'd want another one, or we'd want an even better car. Or when we get the house that we want, we'll want a better house. We'll want to add stuff to it. So it never stops. We have an unlimited craving for things. And this can't be satisfied, obviously. So as you can see, the next bullet point there is we have a very limited amount of resources at our disposal. So we have unlimited needs and wants. Unfortunately, we have limited resources at our disposal. So this dilemma there, as you can see, is that's what scarcity is. So we only have so much time in the day. We only have so much money to spend. We only have so many natural resources in our world. Okay, so we don't have all the land that we need. We don't have water to go around for everybody, an unlimited amount, I should say. We certainly don't have an unlimited amount of money to spend. Even the richest people in the world, okay, they eventually would run out. So we have a dilemma, and this dilemma is based on this concept of scarcity. Unlimited needs and wants, limited resources at our disposal. So we need a system. We have to have something in place that deals with this problem. And we'll get to this in a future lesson, but these three questions tend to figure things out. What we're going to produce, how we're going to produce things, and who's going to get what we produce. And again, we'll get to that later, but this is the system that we use to solve this problem. And as I mentioned later on in the lesson and future videos, we'll talk about the ways that different societies or different countries go about handling that problem. And on a personal level, which really makes sense to us, scarcity forces us to make choices. We cannot have everything. So how do we make choices of how we're going to spend our time? How do we make choices about what we're going to spend our money on? Okay, we're different in those ways. We would spend, if I gave you each $50, it would be spent differently by most of you. So how do we make those choices? How do businesses make choices on what to make? How does Apple Computer know how many iPods to make versus iPhones? How many iPads to make versus MacBooks? I mean, they can't make everything. Apple's not going to start making gym shoes. Okay, they can't make everything. So how do they know what to make? How do they decide what to make? How do they decide how to use their resources? So it's on a big picture there. So really, that decision-making process is extremely, extremely important. So next, in lesson 2, what we'll discuss is how do we make those choices? What factors into that on a big picture, something like Apple Computer, and on a small scale, us as people, how do we make those choices? So that'll be lesson 2.